Namaskar. Good morning, everyone. We hope you had a great time yesterday on the first day of the conference. I'm Tamim.
And I'm Ishita. We welcome you all to the second day of Serv 2025.
Now we can start our first keynote of the day. Let me introduce the chair for the session, Dr. Ravi Mahumani, the convener of the Service in the chapter. Dr. Ravi is the head of the Design Research Lab at TCS Research and an adjunct professor at IDC School of Design, IIT Bombay. He also serves as a progressive farmer and convener of Service Design for Society, India. With over 29 years of industry experience in R&D, product development, and management, he brings extensive expertise in model-driven development, design thinking, design research, and service design. He has successfully led large-scale teams and has proven hands-on experience in establishing research and product development groups from the ground up. With great pride, I welcome Dr. Ravi to chair this session.
Namaskar and very good morning to all of you. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ashok Pal Singh ji, a former civil servant with more than 35 years of experience. Before I move to his formal introduction, I would like to share a few personal thoughts. We have two things in common. Both of us come from farming families and also practice natural farming, and we are equally passionate about making a social impact. In fact, after his distinguished career as a civil servant, he returned to his roots and became deeply involved in farming and various social activities. I have found him to be a very exceptionally pleasant and humble person, which is generally a contrast with the general perception about the bureaucrats. And if you look at his stature, the way he interacted, I am really humbled with all those interactions. Beyond being a highly accomplished civil servant with many accolades to his name, he is also a wonderful human being. Now I feel that I found a new friend, philosopher, and guide in him. Coming back to his formal introduction, he has been a member of the Postal Services Board, the founding managing director and chief executive officer of the India Post Payments Bank, joint secretary to Government of India in the Ministry of Finance, and deputy director general in the Unique Identification Authority of India, that is popularly known as UID. Mr. Singh is associated with several public sector reforms, including design of Aadhaar as the payment address of the individual, design of the direct benefit transfer program of the Government of India for disbursement of social security benefits using biometric identity and bank accounts, networking of the post office to deliver electronic mail, banking, and insurance services, redesign of the reproductive and child health program of India, introduction of the National Child Help Line of India for emergency help of child in need, design of the National Pension Scheme, we known as a NPS, which moved India from a defined benefit to a defined contribution regime, opening of telecommunication in India to competition and the private sector. I think that was a very important move. It happened. Mr. Singh supports street children and rights on public policy. Awarded with achieving Gurukul Scholarship for Leadership and Excellence in 2014, Mr. Singh obtained a master's in public administration from the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, uh, Syracuse University, USA, a master's in history from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi, and participated in a course on creating collaborative solutions, innovations in governance at the Harvard Kennedy School. Over to you, sir. We really welcome you and looking forward for your keynote today. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to the day in terms of what pickings I'm going to have on learning new things from such an interesting gathering of people. I love these morning first sessions. One, because of their quietude, and the second is, you know, very limited audience that is keenly interested in the proceedings. So I think you all design people, and I think most of us would have some preference for quality over quantity. So I think a good beginning to the day. Ravi, thank you for that introduction. And I think those of you who are not Indian residents, but even those who are from this country, you all probably have heard of a jack of all trades and master of none. But you probably have not seen one, and there's one standing right in front of you, which is what my introduction might have established, that I've been kind of meandering during my lifetime. There can be nothing better than that, but Indian civil servants are like that. We typically move from one assignment to another, which has nothing to do with the previous one. When I was finishing the UIDI and Aadhaar, which we are talking about today, my friends and colleagues would ask that where are you headed next, and I said the government's going to find an assignment which has no use for ID and Aadhaar, and that's exactly what they did. They put me to do disinvestment of public sector companies in the stock market, which at that time at least was not using Aadhaar. So we have to give it to a government that they can find something for you even after you put 30 years of service that you've never done before. Great for the individual, not so good for the system. Anyway, I'm using Aadhaar. How many of you are familiar at all with the digital public infrastructure or Aadhaar of India, particularly those who don't live in India or use it? You don't have an idea? Little bit, okay. Because we kind of shout so much about it from the rooftop that I generally don't want to kind of introduce this, but I also realize that that might be only for some. So Aadhaar is, if I'll just put it shortly, is like the national ID program of India. All residents are eligible to get one, including international passport holders if they have been residents of India, which is about, I think the legal definition is 181 days of residency in India. Technically, that's what it is. So it's not a citizenship program. It only enables a resident of India to identify herself as the person that she claims to be. We started in 2009, and well, I was part of the founding team and therefore of the design team. So, you know, today's ability to talk to you guys takes me back a long time, to the time that this product or this service was on the table. So it's as I said, a universal ID which is available to all Indian residents, and it works everywhere in India. Now we are talking of the design part of it. That's how we thought that it ought to be. It is. We decided that it will be, and we are all on the design stage. Let me emphasize that it would be available on an interoperable platform, and it'll be a digital ID which works online, and any user should be who's in need for an ID or an address service should be able to use it. It could be used, on a mobile device or online. We did not really think that it should be used in the form of a plastic or paper, but subsequently there is a usage for it like that also. Uh, it can be linked to a bank account, it can be linked to a telephone, it can be linked to any service or product that requires or is related to an identity. and you can authenticate with biometrics, which is your fingerprints, your iris, also facial, and we give a 12-digit number. The 12th digit is a check digit, and it was planned and designed to be something cradle to grave. The 11 digits make sure that it's a population India will never reach. So hopefully, one Aadhaar number should never be required to be reassigned to anyone. We kind of largely covered this. I just emphasize, for first 3 years, this is we are talking 2009-10. Very few people in India or in across the world understood what is the digital ID, and we were at pains to explain what it is before it actually came out. And everyone would say, "You are issuing a ID card. You are issuing an ID card." And for 3 years, we battled that we are not issuing a card. But today, it is still called an Aadhaar card. The reason we thought that we will not issue a card was that we were dealing with a lot of poor people. And we didn't think that it's the smartest thing to put a perishable commodity, which is of critical importance to them, in their pockets. And then going through a cycle where there would be a continuous requirement. If you lose it, if you damage it, etc., it didn't make sense. 2009-10 connectivity in India was not what it is today. And people would say that, what in the world are you? You're designers, so you would know. So people would say, what are you talking about? This is India. You're talking of marginal farmers. You're talking of tribals. You're talking of people living in hills. Are they ever going to get connected? But the design philosophy was that directionally, where are we heading? Because we are designing for the future. You always design for the future. So that's exactly why we kept it in the form that it was, and it largely comes good today. Digital IDs are hugely sensitive to privacy, and privacy by design, as we'll talk later, was a concept on the drawing board. It was, very importantly, right from the first step, a collaborative program in our understanding, which means that the design could not have been done in a government office or in a corporate office. This required talking to people. Incidentally, last month, a week ago on 29th September, Aadhaar was 15 years old. That's when in 2000, 15 years ago is when we issued the first Aadhaar in a Temli village in Maharashtra, which is largely populated, by what are sometimes called indigenous or tribal people. It currently is possessed by 1.3 billion persons in India. We did call it ID for a billion project right at the outset. Uh, Online, Aadhaar powers about 80 million digital transactions every day. It helped increase the bank accounts coverage in India from 35% to 90%. A lot of people in India couldn't open bank accounts because they could not prove their identity before this. I think it's very difficult today to find a person, a resident of India, who doesn't have an Aadhaar. This 1.3 billion will leave largely children under 5 as uncovered, and there may be some people who, for as a matter of principle or ideology, don't like to carry this stuff. It, I mean, the subject, the you know hyped up word is digital public infrastructure. I'm going to use it sparingly because it just mystifies a very simple concept. Essentially, we are talking of a foundational ID, which is called Aadhaar, and the entire fintech revolution of India, which we in India believe is second to the Taj Mahal or ahead of it, is not really the case. But that's why we use words like revolution. I'm not quite sure whether it is any of that. We've also done These are social security transfers, which we call direct benefit transfers. Direct benefit because the money goes straight to your bank account, which is linked to your ID. About 4.4 trillion rupees worth in these last 15 years. And this is a number, all these numbers are continuously growing. And BC or business correspondents are, the ability to provide interoperable banking at doorsteps across the country. It led to my second assignment, which with the India Post Payments Bank, where the post office in India has about 155,000 branches and 350 post persons. Who It's probably the only organization in the country which has a doorstep reach right across, with no exception. So even a person, I don't mean to be derogatory, who's living in a disconnected drain pipe is connected through the post office in India, and now digitally so. At some point of time, as it usually happens with successful projects, the UID and Aadhaar, which I believe was more significantly a governance experiment, contracted to being a technology project, which probably was extremely, which is, I think, the most unfortunate thing which has happened, because if the UID which produced Aadhaar was as famous as its product, Aadhaar, then the multiplier effect on the way India is governed could have been far greater, because Aadhaar is a success because of the way it was designed, the way it was conceptualized, the way it was executed, and it was a new way of doing things, at least in the Indian government. And India had far more to gain to replicate and expand that than merely satisfy itself to say that we have this great fate of a technology project. But in public policy space, these things happen, and short term gains sometimes get traded for long term ones. The other thing we had, almost the first thought in our mind when the team started getting together, and I might have been the fifth or the sixth employee in the organization, was that whatever we're going to do, we are doing this for India. We are not doing it for government of India, because we believe that governments are in a democracy not mandated to work for themselves, and they have no business to work for themselves. It's another matter today that, and unfortunately, because of a Supreme Court ruling, Aadhaar is associated as a product of the government for the government. It was never meant to be that, and it actually limits its usage or leverage to less than 5% of what its abilities are. It's gradually opening up, and that's a good thing. So right on, it was that this belongs to India, and that includes citizens, civil society, private and public sector, everyone. We coded some basic design principles before doing anything at all. By coded, it was that we also had agreed that we are going to keep documenting our decisions. So there's always a specific reference point to what we are doing. And it shouldn't be left to individual interpretations beyond a point. So the first thing was that we are going to be, by design, we will be minimalist. And that meant that we will do only that much as is necessary. It put us into a lot of inconvenience, but we stuck to that. Like data collection. Now, the government wanted us to collect all the data. So they said, since you are going to have an interface with every resident, Health Ministry said, you get my data. Election Commission wanted their data, so on. Second thing was choice in competition. That whatever we will do, we must have choice. And that choice must be based on competition. Similarly, whoever will use our product or service, the name was yet to come, must always have choice and to choose from competition. Speed, scale, and security were very important to us before we even knew what we are going to be doing beyond the point, because the public projects have a very short life. There's an enthusiasm, You get your funding, you get your mandate. And if you don't deliver in a compressed time frame, it dissipates. So we gave ourselves 5 years to give 1 billion Indians the digital ID that we had in our mind. So the whole design process was at every step, it had to be minimalist, choice, competition, speed, scale, security. It's a digital ID, privacy by design. And most important was that adopting the principle of outside in, at least in the government of India. But my understanding is governments usually design their processes and systems inside out. You start looking at compliance of your rules, regulations, law, distorts everything. But we were very clear that this ID will be designed with an outside in perspective, which is we will start with the premise: how is the owner of Aadhaar, the resident, going to access it, use it? And it was a fundamental design principle which was never violated. So, if give you an example of minimalist design, against odd odds, we said the only data that we will take from an individual is name, address, gender, and date of birth. If we had the ability, we would not have taken the address either, because the address is always a point in time reference. It doesn't serve much purpose in the 21st century, but like we could never convince people that we are not issuing a card, we could never convince people that address is not critical. Even 15 years later, you know, there can be a whole lot of people who can raise their hands to say, just how can you say that? But I think we can say that. Uh, we could actually have done without all of these, because we were not going to identify an individual by any demographic data. It's not possible to do it in a country like India. Millions of people have the same name. Millions actually have the same name and the same father's name. There are thousands of locations and villages by the same name. So, in identifying a person, none of this was relevant at all. And that's what made us go to the biometrics part of it. And here we decided that we would do 10 fingerprints. At that point of time, we were told that the largest biometric data was probably available with the FBI, and it didn't exceed 200,000. So when we started looking at this particular issue, we were told by the best experts in the world that fingerprints are supposed to be unique, but they really haven't definitively been proved to be so. So the assurance we got was, say, something like a 95% deduplication on the basis of fingerprints. But it came to that 99 point magic number of nines if we were to add the iris, which we did. And we didn't think we had a functional use at that point of time immediately for the photograph, but we were aware of the fact that facial technology would be growing by leaps and bounds. So it was a good idea to also capture that. So that was the minimalist design that we stuck to. I mean, starting with point of the inside out was that people should be able to relate to the product. And it also brings me to, you know, choice and competition. So we gave ourselves choice by doing a national competition for designing our logo. And this was a very high profile project in India. So we virtually had who's who of at least the Indian design world participating in it. But the prize went to someone unknown, Atul Pandey in Pune, who was designing for hobby. I mean, who just thought the competition caught his fancy. And what we had was a logo which we adopted, which symbolizes a unique fingerprint in the center, as you can see. There's an abstractly shaped graphite that incorporates lotus petals. Lotus has a special meaning in India, but also relates to foundation. Aadhaar is a Hindi word, but it's actually found in as many as 13 Indian languages. So The name was coming because it was inclusive, it was well known, and it means foundation or support. The ID that we were creating and now which had a name, Aadhaar, which it did not have for several months, we thought it's a foundational ID. So that's how this thing resonated with us. These two colors have special sanctity and meaning in India. Speed, scale. I mean, the general view in the government was something as sensitive as an identity can only be handled by government officers. And we were very clear that this is going nowhere because, for one, too few, second, too inefficient, third, inaccessible. So we just opened this up to any organization credible with a network. So if the post office is credible and has a network, you can go to a post office, banks, insurance companies, government offices of all kinds as well. But that's how this ecosystem was built. Center, you have the UID, a bank or a post office is a registrar, but we know they have their own jobs to do and they wouldn't be able to do this with their own people. So we allowed them to engage enrollment agencies, which were private companies who did the front end. And then the choice available and the competition to the resident was that you can enroll for Aadhaar from any part of the country, not where you are residing or where you are working. And you can enroll yourself at a point that is convenient to you or that gives you better service. And at its peak, we used to have something like 40,000 enrollment centers running all over the country. 4 million enrollment centers running in the country at any given point of time. And it was an incentive compatible model, which again we had in our mind at the design stage, which is for that speed. So for every successful enrollment of Aadhaar, we would then give what was equivalent of $1. And successful meant that if you fail to generate an Aadhaar because of poor data or a duplicate enrollment or something, you get nothing. But what it did was it opened up the animal spirits of the enrollment agencies who just realized that the more you do, the more you earn, the better service you give, the better, the more people you enroll because there's competition. And it worked. And that's why in 5 years we did that 1 billion figure. We never invested anything, and this was again at a design stage, that we will not invest in any hardware. So the enrollment agency is the one which invested in all the hardware, which was all certified by us, and it was secured with our application, which has then had a 2048-bit encryption. But and this is how it actually looked like. Well, one of the best known design artists in India at that time with a commercial shop was Michael Foley. Some of you might have heard of him. We gave him a consolation prize for the logo that he designed but was not accepted and was beaten by a commoner. That why don't you do this, design a case for our enrollment agents to carry across the country, across a river, up a hill, in the desert. So this is an image of that box which Michael then designed for us. That's how the design looked. Now these, I've gone back and taken slides from 2009-10 to give you a, you know, look, feel, and touch of what things was going on. So this is how, at the design stage, we were looking at that. We engage registrars, sign legal documents with them, prepare them for enrollment, which is with train their operators had to be certified by us. So we organize trainings, etc., for them and certifications. Very important out here, introducers, which is from the point of view of that outside in thing that I've been talking about. Government needed that we have some document backing ID and address. But we realized until 1989 in India, it was not compulsory to register a birth. Even now, there are millions of people who don't have that. So we provided that your date of birth could be with the help of a document. It could be just a declared date, because otherwise people would get stuck that I don't have a date of proof of birth, so I can't register. But I mean, this is the kind of thinking that we are doing, that if everyone can get it, then there have to be zero impediments. Similarly, then it came for address. So simple things, easy to anticipate, were that a child in the family may not have a address proof except the father or the mother's. So we had this introducer system. Similarly, a destitute child living on the streets may have neither a parent nor a proof of address, but any credible non-government organization working or familiar with the child could introduce the child into the system. We were also the first, at least in India, to provide for marking a third gender. But the whole thing was, as designers, you know that success or failure, a lot of it rests at this particular point of time, how deeply and how well you can think through a particular process. Anyway, the first part was get the setup. The second part was do the enrollment. Third, on top, what is there is the central ID depository, number 6, to which this data was communicated. And it could be done in a batch mode or in devices. It didn't have to be online. Where there was a biometric deduplication which was done, a 12-digit Aadhaar number was issued, or in some cases rejected. And then there was this question that how do you reach it? So we devised a letter which would go. I'll probably show you another image. So the post person or the mailman delivered Aadhaar at your doorstep by way of a letter. This letter does not have any security markings or any security features. For us, it was just a piece of paper, because which you can copy or do whatever you feel like. And in fact, at the back of it, it says that, to establish identity, authenticate. Even 15 years later, people take that piece of paper or an image of it on a card as a proof of ID. We never said it is. But if it works, it's just as well, because IDs are usually asked for no rhyme or reason. So if you can get away with this, there's nothing wrong with it. Things like establishing a contact center, etc., were all envisioned before. I mean, this what I'm showing you is before any of this happened. Just some images of how we were capturing iris, how we were capturing fingerprints. If you see the lady who's giving her fingerprints, there's a screen facing her. And we decided that a screen must always face the person registering, so that if you have the ability and the interest, and you can see your data being entered correctly, and you can point out that corrections. The best educated people never did that, and our chairperson, Mr. Nandan Lilekani, told his spouse when she went to register, and I told mine, that you people are very conscious about your photograph. Now make sure that it is satisfactory. And after our respective spouses' Aadhaar came home, it almost became a cause for divorce, because everyone thinks that the worst photograph that they can have ever had is the one which gets onto Aadhaar. It had something to do with the fact that you're dealing on scale. Quality of cameras was not the best, but our point was, you had the screen right in front of you. Why didn't you see it? There were challenges in enrollment which had to be anticipated in the design stage. So, person on a wheelchair, women who have work or children to take care of, small kids, old persons, getting them stable. These all went into design consideration, reaching out to the marginalized people, which that incentive compatibility did a terrific job. I mean, there are agencies who realize that let's get to the backwaters first, and you know, rather than skimming the business from the top, let's do it from the bottom. Capturing biometrics, you all given them many times, it's not easy. So these issues had to be accounted for. There was the scale of enrollment, 1 billion people. I mean, in the initial first 3 years, people were asking us, the more aware intellectuals, that why do I need an ID? What will I do with it? Poor people don't ask these questions. Particularly if government is giving something, they recognize that some benefit is going to come out, so they queued up. We spoke about challenges of scale and reach and how we overcame them. This is typically how an enrollment center, which could be set up anywhere which is publicly accessible, would have queues like this, notwithstanding the fact that 4 million enrollment centers were available. That's how that letter that we sent out in the first version looked like. And it says Aadhaar is a proof of identity, not citizenship. We were taken to the highest court in the world that we are granting citizenship. And I mean, I thought it was not funny that the Supreme Court admits it on one of these grounds when we are saying in red that it's not a proof of citizenship. It's still a charge that is worked against us. And then it says to establish identity, authenticate, which again means that there is a due diligence which is done behind this. The post office was used to deliver the Aadhaar, but the interesting thing was that we never had to issue a paid advertisement in our first 5 years of existence to promote Aadhaar. We did have some vision beyond the ID itself, and which was, this is again at the design stage. What if everyone in India has three numbers? We used to call it the magic of three numbers, which is you have an electronic bank account number, you have a mobile telephone number, and we were giving you the ID number. And we thought that is just pure magic because it means that almost everything you can do anytime, anywhere. The phone will connect you to a service provider. If you have to pay for the service, you pay digitally with the electronic bank account. And if to identify yourself, you identify yourself with the help of Aadhaar. It actually leaves very little for anyone to move out of wherever you are. That is the potential which the Supreme Court of India has put a lid on. So, what you see is 5% of the power of Aadhaar, because that is where India can be, including for voting. But that happens. It later got rechristened by another government as what is now more known JAM. The Jandhan was aligned to this program later by the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, to get everyone that electronic bank account, which needed to be done on a campaign mode. And A is for the Aadhaar and M for the mobile. It works well. Let's take one real example, which also did the direct benefit of social security transfer bit. I mean, at the design stage, you have to get your hands dirty. And we were all over. And we tracked the journey of a real person in Jharkhand, a poor laborer who was part of government's 100-day employment guarantee scheme, then called NRGA. NREGA. The scheme still exists. Now, Ram worked as a laborer, and then every Thursday was given a piece of paper to collect his wages from a designated bank. There was no interoperable banking, which also Aadhaar enabled. There were no business correspondents doing doorstep banking then. And quickly he walked 6 kilometers to a bus stop from his village, took a crowded bus to a town 14 kilometers away where that bank stood. And at that point of time, since it was the designated day, waited out in sun, rain, or whatever to collect the wages. And the bank closed its counter at 2:30 in the afternoon. So he was lucky to get his wages or come again. There was an expense involved out here and a loss of days' wages at least. And then get back home the same way as he went. These people could often be in debt, and it was a publicly announced date that you can go and collect your wages tomorrow. So all the people that he may have owed money were standing right outside that bank when he came out with his money that, let's first have our share, then you can do what you have to do. So we thought this is the puzzle that we need to crack as an application of Aadhaar when people are asking us, what good is Aadhaar going to do for me? So we started this process of linking Aadhaar to your bank account. And the choice that we did really was that when you enroll for Aadhaar, you can opt to link Aadhaar, which you will get subsequently with your bank account. And on successful generation of Aadhaar, with the consent of the enrollee, the Aadhaar number was shared with participating banks and post offices, who automatically then linked it to either an existing account or opened a new account for you. I mean, this I'm saying kind of rather in short. And that's how this process of Aadhaar linked to bank accounts became ubiquitous. We also simplified that for a lot of less aware people, operating a bank account was not easy. So you could operate your bank account just with your Aadhaar number. Similarly, you could send money from one person to another person just using your Aadhaar number till the Supreme Court of India thoughtlessly applied restrictions on exposing Aadhaar. We thought Aadhaar can be the most public number and it's designed to be as secure as that. My Director General Ram Sevak Sharma, after the Supreme Court judgment, which is 7 years old, put his Aadhaar number on the Twitter with a global challenge to anyone in the world to do any harm to him, knowing his Aadhaar. In 8 years, nothing has been done. It's a cat and mouse game, we agree. But the fact of the matter was, this number was supposed to be freely used. But we have a restriction on it, which again totally inhibits its usage and potential. Bank branches are few, so we had to tackle this issue also. So we devised what is called a micro ATM, which is nothing but a phone. At that point of time, and still cards are used, a card reader, a fingerprint scanner, and a small printer boxed into one. And it's something which you can do a balance inquiry, deposit, remittance, and withdrawal safely and pretty securely. So what did this was the following. Now we come back to Ram's story where we started. Ram is told that you can collect your wages, they are ready. Well, he can go to the nearest shop, even in his village, where, with the help of a micro ATM, initiates a transaction of whatever kind he wants, authenticates with a fingerprint. The shopkeepers, the packet travels in real time, close to real time, to the bank of the shopkeeper, which then routes it to the National Payments Corporation of India, which is a payment processing company like Master and Visa card. It comes to the UID. UID authenticates RAM, comes back to the NPCI, which then sends it to Ram's bank, which has the bank account linked to Ram's Aadhaar number. So, authentication and authorization are two parts in a banking transaction anywhere in the world. So, we started doing third party authentication service for anyone actually who wants to do. Basis that authorization for the amount concerned would be passed by the bank, ascertaining the bank balance and things, and it goes to the BC or the shopkeeper's bank, which credit, let's say it's a withdrawal of 100 rupees into the account of the shopkeeper, who then gives a cash out of 100 rupees to Ram. In reasonable connectivity, this is an under 5 minute transaction, a 5 second transaction. It is the basis of what we now called UPI. It's just the same architecture. Instead of on a shared device, which is a micro ATM, it happens on your personal device. And that's how it was envisioned to be done. But what this meant was Ram could now collect his money at his convenience from anywhere that he felt like, away from the money lender, without standing in a queue, without foregoing a day's wages, and without any traveling expenses. We envision this, it's all a reality now. So, Aadhaar is used for vaccination records, it's used to pay health workers in remote areas. You can pay school fees with it, scholarships get linked to it, insurance, wages, salary, delivery of food, so many things. I mean, when I was talking of those millions and billions of transactions worth taking place every day, this is the magic of that three number which is working. We'll stop here because I've timed myself already to 42 minutes and we started late. Happy to take some questions. This is, it's an ongoing story. We can take a day over it also, as we can for anything that everyone else out here has to say. Thank you so much.
So, thanks a lot, sir. I think it was really wonderful, and this is the first time we got to know that what happened behind this Aadhaar, so well known. And really, it was enlightening that the so much of design principles, design things were followed, and most of the time was spent on drawing board, designing this thing, making it future ready. I think it's really wonderful thing. So I think we can take two questions and then.
Thank you so much for a very insightful back of the room sort of this thing. There were a couple of points that seem to have been in the news, not so much now. One was the fingerprints, particularly of those who are labor people who do a lot of labor, and whether that is a problem. And the second one was whether the other thing that came later, which was the virtual ID. Were these things that post facto came to this thing, or was that already anticipated that something like this would happen?
First part was entirely anticipated before we collected the first biometric, that biometrics may not be easy to collect and people who may have defacements wouldn't be able to do so. You had that iris option, you had the facial recognition one coming in, which now come handy. But a design principle which I did not enumerate out here was we were never looking for a 100% solution, because you have no 100% solutions. And the exception cannot defeat if you do a 80-20 and 80% solution. So, we were very clear that we don't solve all the problems of all the people in the world. and we are not going to get stuck with it. But that notwithstanding, the options, as I said, were there. There was something else we came out with, which all of you have Aadhaar, and if you look carefully at an enrollment slip, there will be a tick on one finger, which is the best finger. So and you don't have to be able to give a successful impression of all 10 fingers to get Aadhaar, even one will be enough. Actually, none will be. Let's say you have, so the question was, what if I have no fingers? Well, you can still enroll for Aadhaar. Iris, even in a blind person, doesn't get damaged. So it's there. But there was a provision that your iris cannot be captured, your fingerprints cannot be captured. There is a provision that you will still get Aadhaar. You cannot be denied Aadhaar for any of this. So that first part was taken care of. The second was about
The virtual ID.
yes, this is entirely post facto creation of the Supreme Court judgment that put restrictions on exposing Aadhaar. It put restrictions on taking your Aadhaar number. I mean, it's illegal today in India to store the Aadhaar number. So then this kind of a gimmickry that you're talking about had to be invented.
Thank you.
But it's, things are progression also. So be it. But what we feel is that I told you that I think it's pretty secure.
Is there any plans for future versions of Aadhaar, or is it a one-point solution? Do you have version next, or perhaps something else that is coming forward?
Very good question. So Aadhaar in India is a monopoly of the UIDI, which was the first violation of our principle of choice and competition. We get greedy. It arose, there was a question that should Aadhaar and its services be priced? When we decided to not price it, we knocked out competition. Because who's going to come in? In any case, it got also subsequently statutorily regulated in a manner that no one else but UIDI will do it. What that means is, and that's what happens when you violate your principles, that it's not the smartest ID anymore in the world. And it won't be considered to be even as smart as it is today, 5 years or 10 years later, because it is and will go down like any monopoly which is devoid of competition. And since you asked this question, the second great violation took place with what you know as UPI, which happens to be a monopoly provided by UIDI to NPCI. We might think it's the smartest payment solution in the world, it's not. And the reason it's not is that it's again not incentive compatible, and competition is barred from providing a service similar to it. The MasterCard actually went to the Competition Commission of India and predictably lost the case. But the untold story, my session was supposed to be on untold stories, but I thought design is paramount out here. What is known as UPI was first delivered to the UID 3 years before anyone else had it by Visa, who came to us and said that we share your 3 number magic dream and you tell us what you want and we'll devise the solution. Visa devised the solution with a company which belongs to where we are currently, Yelemancheli. And it was introduced as a product called Saral. There's a story why the banks didn't promote it, but the more unfortunate part was that all that learning and technology, lock, stock, and barrel, went to NPCI and the door was closed on everyone else. So, sir, as things stand, it's what it is. UPI and Aadhaar, both these are admittedly stagnant products. They will, they must, and they should lose out to better products and services and competition. Because we violated that principle And thank you for allowing me to say that.
Thanks a lot, sir. So, sir will be around today and tomorrow some part. So I think you can interact with him, ask the questions. So I think we can over to
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Swami.
I just want to say that when I come to academic institutions, sometimes I'm addressed as a professor. I'm not one. I've done a work in health ministry, and I am sometimes called a doctor. I am not one. And Ravi is kind enough to call me sir, but I'm not knighted. Thank you.
Felicitation. Uh,
Thank you, sir, for this extremely insightful talk, and thank you for your participation. Um, I would request Dr. Ravi to felicitate Sri Ashok Pal Singh ji.
uh, Now I request Professor Seema to felicitate Dr. Ravi for chairing the session.
We now move on to the second keynote of session of the day. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Shivaji, the chair of this session. Dr. Shivaji is a distinguished architect, researcher, and academic currently heading the Department of Design at IIT Hyderabad. He also serves as affiliate faculty at the Greenco School of Sustainability, the Department of Climate Change, and the Department of Heritage Science and Technology. As principal investigator for the Center for Geospatial AI and Digital Twins and COE Vigraha, he leads pioneering initiatives in sustainability, digital heritage, and immersive technologies while contributing to rural development. With a PhD in sustainability assessment from IIT Guwahati and with over 17 years of experience in academia and industry, he continues to drive impactful design and research innovations, guiding 10 PhD scholars on themes spanning sustainability, digital twins, and place based architectural analysis. I would like to invite Professor Shivaji to the podium to introduce the second keynote speaker.
So, namaste and very good morning. Well, amazing insights, from this, like a first keynote, like a session. Thank you, sir, for first of all. Well, we all Indians, like know about, like a Aadhaar, but the intricacies and details of it are really eye-opening. And yeah, I think your comments about what's the future of it, definitely it opens up, like more questions, more challenges, and I think. This podium, this platform provides like that opportunity to like be discussed. So we are really glad to have like your session. Thank you again, sir. So I'm very much like pleased and honored to welcome our today's second keynote speaker. Let me introduce Dr. Yoko Akama from RMIT University, Australia, whose work is at the forefront of design research that bridges culture, community, futures, and justice. So, number of things we can find, like a overlapping over here from the first session. So, it will be very interesting to, like a look at. Well, Dr. Akama is an associate professor in the School of Design at RMIT with deep roots across Australia, Japan, the UK, and the US. Drawing from her Japanese heritage, her practice embodies notions of in betweenness and mindfulness, inviting us to design not just artifacts but meaningful relationships and futures. Again, a very interesting, like a cusp of things, how we are seeing from present to the communities to the futures. Her research spans participatory and co-design with indigenous communities as well, design for social innovation, community resilience, and speculative design for uncertain futures. Again, we are talking about like those things over here. Drawing from Japanese philosophy, her practice emphasizes mindfulness, betweenness, and relationality. Her scholarship spans participatory and co-design with indigenous communities, social innovation in Asia Pacific, works on disaster resilience, speculative design. She has led collaborative projects with First Nations, secured major funding and won awards such as Good Design Australia. She is also a co-founder of the Desi AP network and published influential books including Uncertainty and Possibility 2018, Moods of Uncertainty in HCI 2022, and Entanglements of Designing Social Innovation in Asia Pacific 2023. So, today she is going to share insights on design readiness in uncertain futures, provoking us to rethink how design can respond respectfully and generatively to uncertainty and plural ways of being. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yoko Akama to the stage.
Yep. Um, Thank you. Such an honor to be here. I want to firstly thank Ravi and Prasad for this amazing conference. I've really enjoyed my visit and the experiences yesterday, the food and the cultural programs, the effort that's gone into. Also want to thank the Serv Days organizing team. There are many, the photographers, the organizers, the timekeepers. It's a lot of work. I also want to thank Shiva for your generous introduction, and also to Ashok Pal Singh keynote, such an important inclusive services to the community. Really wonderful to hear that. So my talk is design readiness in uncertain futures. So this is a video. Maybe just lower the volume a bit. The birds can get quite noisy. Excellent, thank you. So this is a video of welcoming the New Year sunrise on the island and bays of the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. It was a cloudless, a tranquil dawn amongst the water birds starting their rituals. Since 2002, I've been living and working on Naarm, now called Melbourne, Australia. Like these water birds, I also follow a social ritual. The custom of gathering to watch the New Year sunrise is a practice I grew up with in Japan, stemming from their native animist spirituality of worshipping the sun to give respect and gratitude to the many worlds that have sustained our lives. So firstly, I'd like to start this talk with another custom, the acknowledgement of country in a diplomatic ritual that I was taught, and I like to offer this in my native tongue, Japanese. 今住んでいる土地、クーリンネーションの東部、ウォイウォランとブンドラン先住民、この民族と祖先の長老に敬意を示したいと思います。アボリジナルとトレス海峡諸島民は、統治権を譲渡しておらず、7万5千年以上持続されている文化と創造性、デザイン、研究と教育が、この大地と水源を守り、育んできたことに深く感謝します。さらに、様々な土地の伝統的カストリアン、そして日本のアイヌや琉球民族、最後に皆様のご先祖、ご家族やコミュニティで、引き継がれている知恵とレジデンスへ、尊重する気持ちでこのトークを始めたいと思います。I'd like to also thank some friends who have helped me think through what I plan to share, Some sketchy ideas still, but I really appreciated their input. So that's Shana Agid, Lisa Grocott, Abby Lopez, Sarah Pink, and Jacina Dink. And the Designing Entangled Social Innovation in Asia Pacific team here, and the Circular Design Practice Networks that I belong to. So we are so lucky to live in a region rich with wisdoms where we can witness, participate in practices that have endured for centuries. Among these are continuous Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures of 75,000 years and more that traces the movements of species, lands, and waters over many climate changes. In this talk, I'd like to share several practices that have endured over many generations that teaches us ways to live with conditions of uncertainty, to see what they might teach us in service design. We are living in a time of continual cycles of disruption, accelerated by conflict, political instability, social divisions, and climate change. This has been described as a polycrisis where catastrophes interact and magnifies to cause further existential and systemic harm. Alison's keynote yesterday was a really good reminder of this. For many years, my design research has led me to work with communities, organizations, and government agencies to prepare and rebuild in compounded social and ecological disasters. To learn from those who have lived and continue to live with catastrophes has taught me so much. So, this is a photo I took in Kesendama in 2012 to understand how the communities in this fishing town were recovering from March 2011 disaster. I was led to Kyoto Komaru, 60 meters, 330-ton fishing vessel that was carried 750 meters inland. I saw crushed cars and houses underneath. Flowers and various offerings were placed beside to remember the loss and the lost. Our ancestors have taught us not to live so close to the shoreline because tsunami comes after the big earthquakes. However, developers build on flood zones because of a housing shortage and overpopulation. Urbanization have paved the streets with concrete. Altogether, this channeled the torrent of the tsunami and magnified the devastating force further inland. Sophisticated sensors can quantify risks in disasters, but they cannot teach us how to live with disasters. In fact, they have reinforced our overdependencies on accuracies and solutions. These predictions have increased land realties and insurance premiums for areas zoned as high risk, providing a sense of security to those with privilege to decide where and how to live, whilst widening the gap for those who have fewer affordances. In this way, design and technology are implicated in widening the social privileges and disadvantages that exacerbate further in catastrophes. I'll never forget the smell of acrid smoke and the red skies of the bushfires in Australia. Since 2010, I've been invited to help communities prepare for fire, flood, and cyclones. Over a decade or more, I saw repeating symptoms of individualism and protectionism. For example, property owners retreat privately in untouched wilderness. Ownership mindset fences off private estates, in turn cutting off alternative access routes needed when main roads are closed or blocked. Protection mindset means trees, bushes, and grasses in national parks are often left naturally. Uncle Dave Wanden, a Wurundjeri elder and custodian of fire stick cultural knowledge, teaches us that burning regularly with cool heat minimizes fuel load and prevent the severity and speed that causes the catastrophes we've seen. But structured racism, an individualistic and protectionist view, sees fire as a dangerous risk, not as a tool that heals, renews, regenerates, in a way that Uncle Wanden knows. So this traps us in a cycle of worsening conditions further reinforcing dependencies on services and systems to control, manage, making people less resilient in uncertainty on a continent where fire is and was constant over a millennia. So these patterns confirms that disasters are a combination of natural and human-made. The systems and design and technology that have built to protect, manage, and endure don't work in the way they were intended. They always have a way of breaking down or worsening other kinds of problems. Breakdowns reveal the fractures and assumptions that are deeply hardwired. So the early part of this talk contends with the mindsets that are embedded in our profession and disciplines to elevate the ethical and political dimensions to unlearn. When systems become unreliable or fail entirely, often the one thing we can turn to are the soft, adaptive, relational infrastructures rooted in places and socialities. Let's recognize how plentiful these are that might already be part of your own or our own practices too. My concerns are echoed by the Colombian anthropologist Arturo Escobar, who talks about the danger of fixing modern problems with modern solutions, especially if these crises stem from modern world-making practices that have erased, ignored, subjugated divergent ontoepistemes and worldviews. Modernity deemed the objective brain as superior, which prefers rationality, universality, certainty, and control. This specific kind of knowledge has become a process, strategy, a system, a method that can be abstracted, reproduced, and generalized. This aids the movement between time, culture, places, and people, so it can circulate, replicate, reproduce even more. This is like a powerful virus. When this virus claims a host or design, this is what I've called dominant design. So here I've drawn the continent of dominant design to show how engorged it has become in our profession and discipline. Just like the colonial cartographers who magnified and centralized their own nations on their maps to demarcate power and territories. Dominant design has swollen in ideology and status by accompanying capital, growth, control, and progress by powerful and privileged individuals, companies, and institutions. I've seen how dominant design, as technological and protectionist fixes, has been wielded as the most common response to disasters, and I fear this will continue to be our main response to the polycrisis. Service design has not escaped the virus of dominant design. At Rio Serv Des' 2023, with friends in participatory design, Shana, Anne, and I, critiqued one of the most distinctive methods and origins, Shostak's service blueprint. So let's take a look at Exhibit 1, Blueprint for a Corner Shoe Shine, a template to systematize how workers should follow commands and customer responses. This is a chilling example because many Black African Americans were a service laborer around the time when this article was written. The line of visibility takes on a cruel role in concealing gendered, racialized, class-based service laborers off stage, in turn privileging the customers and business owners, those who already have power. So when we ignore the politics around services, labor, and privilege, I see this as a symptom of dominant design virus carried inside methods like these. So rather than craving newness, I'm asking myself, what capacities can we as designers, researchers, and educators learn from things we dismiss as mundane? What I share or hope to share isn't new, which is precisely my point. In fact, with my greying hair, I believe in wisdoms rooted in deep, incremental spirals over time. What adaptations must we develop from joining in with practices that are also just as paramount for being ready in uncertainty? What instructions might we find when we look around and underneath our feet? I aim to beckon humility and ally with practices nearby via skin, tone, and touch. I share how we are already carrying insights and truths inside our bodies between how we move and make together and through the maintenance of relationships with lands, waters, weathers, and creatures too. So you can tell I'm quite grumpy. My ramblings will not be useful for those who are thirsty for methods, strategies, processes, and frameworks for solving problems and improving services, systems, and experiences. I plead your forgiveness for denying what you might be expecting of me in a keynote. So please don't demand your money back from Ravi and Prasad. I do empathize with your disappointment. It's not your fault because we are all victims of dominant design that values rationality over reciprocity, processes over practices. So many of you might know this futures cone, a common schema to plan the future. There are various versions of these, but essentially they all have the same DNA on possible, plausible, probable, preferable, lots of P's futures. There's something very assuring in the absolute certainty it promises that a forward progress is guaranteed in its clean, unwavering, smooth vector lines. But what more can this diagram tell us? It demonstrates how powerful these models are in reinforcing an ideology of progress. It assumes that we move in one direction only, that time and history is linear, that new is better than the old, and to leave that past behind, to strategize a future that is long away from the new and the now. Dominant design fits perfectly with this model, making us think that technological improvements reflect human advancement. Like hand in glove, the polycrisis fits perfectly into a pre-existing problem solution mold. This is echoed by a friend and anthropologist, Sarah Pink, who wails how the polycrisis has been analysed and defined as a problem by powerful institutions like the UN and the International Science Council. Then the future industries, including consultancies and professions like design, are called in to map what they've analysed, run co-design workshops, and give guidance to come up with radically new, original innovations. In doing so, dominant design maintains its position, ensuring that it continues to be valued and be remunerated in perpetuating the same ideology of modernity. And what about the handful of people in the now? They're mostly those with privilege, well-educated, influential leaders in the global north to marshal, strategize, resource, future-proof organizations. This narrow now denies divergent values and worldviews. Innumerable lived experiences shape the undocumented paths we take and have taken. Are you part of the handful of the now? Are we? Are our families and communities in this picture? No, they're not. So the power of these models is its assumed universality. They become a template, tweaked but possessing the same DNA. They replicate again and again, like a virus, in policies, business strategies, foresight, forecasting, design thinking, and service design. In this global circulation, they penetrate and implant in our minds, so we forget to question them anymore. Even worse, it displaces our own native, lived lineage of temporalities and futures. This forecloses diversity and the practice knowledges that might teach us otherwise. However, this means dominant design is ignorant and less capable of learning from temporalities that are not future orientated or defined by a problem solution. Its ideology means it dismisses things that are in the past and cannot see what's hidden in laborious repetition and microscopic internal transformations. Radical innovation is like the mushrooms that fruit only in the right conditions. The flesh we pick and eat, hopefully without dying, are part of a much larger interlacing organism underground, moving through reciprocities of living and decaying, wrapping its tendrils around obstacles, disappearing inside many things. I wish to chip away at the dominant design mindset, much like the garden snails that nibbled and slowly ate this paper. In moving gently, digesting and mediating multitudes, I aim to share musings in design readiness that are responsive in uncertainty. I see these as preparedness that are layered through repetition. They weave tissues between people, places, rhythms of many worlds, deeply rooted in cycles of seasons, rituals, occasions. These teachings in readiness are not shown to be taken literally as a how-to guide or presented as models to amplify, replicate, or innovate them. Dominant design can make us think that's what we should do. I've selected 3 stories that are personal and cultural: bathing, Boro no Sashiko, and Matsuri. You might recognize these as sustainable or regenerative in the Western sense. It is vernacular, a low-grade infrastructure compared to a high-level strategy. But I hope to show what's embedded inside them: principles, integrity, rigor, and sophistication by being tried, tested, and maintained, sharing knowledge and passing this down over many generations. When I first took my then boyfriend, Dion, to Japan to meet my parents, my father hardly spoke to him for the first 2 days. My dad is a typical Japanese father: quiet, worked hard, long hours, showed little emotion. But on the 3rd day of Dion's stay, my dad beckoned Dion to sit next to him in our living room. Finally, my dad was going to say something. Dion-san, come and sit down, my dad says. He spreads the Asahi Shimbun in front of him and points to the weather forecast of the week. Wednesday will be sunny. A good day to do the laundry. That's all he said. This haiku-like minimal interaction had massive significance. It was an invitation from my dad to to Dion to bathe with us and to leave his undergarments in the laundry. This is a significant gesture of welcoming him into the rhythms of our lives and into our family. Dion is now my husband of 15 years. Bathing isn't just about washing one's body. Sharing the bathwater interlocks the family's temporal and spatial schedules: when to eat, sleep, and do the laundry. In this way, heat and energy is tied with intimacy and kinship, to heal, relax, care that seeps deeply into one's kokoro, mind, spirit, and soul. Before middle-class homes had their own bathrooms, bathing was mostly at the sento, a public bathhouse, or onsen, hot springs, which are still very plentiful around Japan. Bathing in our local onsen on New Year's is a family ritual, a chance for me to catch up with my mum and my aunties. They're all in their late 70s, and they love the attention, to cackle and complain for hours so they can flaunt their various ailments and treatments. This renews our bonds because any ties strained through long periods of being far apart. We also see this as hadaka no tsukiai, or naked skinship, as an important form of social bonding amongst friends, colleagues, teams, or classmates to work around the restrictive social hierarchical thresholds. And because the practice of bathing comes from sharing communal resources, when the infrastructure moved inside the home, the bathtub was built next to the laundry, and families like ours continued to share the bathwater that required our time to be in sync. Children typically bathe with a partner or with a parent or relative, and this habit socializes culturally specific lessons inside the home and in public bathhouses, like avoid wasting or spoiling the water, greeting the neighbors, showing respect and humility. I have no memory of being instructed, possibly because they started so young, but like the heat and water, these social practices have soaked through my body to become fundamental to how I care for my own and of others. This is our bathroom in Melbourne, and we have maintained some things in our home here. Within our two-person family, we also share the bathwater, including our dog, Bento. She's washed at the end. The warm water is used for laundry, for mopping the floor. It's great for tough stains. And then we flush the toilet, water the garden. This means cleaning, watering, dog grooming, and the weather is synced with bathing. These are what practice theorists call bundles of practices. So as you can see, bathwater is not just a utility. It's spiritual, relational, symbolic in care and connection to people and places. So what can the practice of bathing teach us about design readiness for uncertainty? Routines tend to be dismissed by being assumed as a repetition of the same, when in fact there are always hidden micro-adjustments, improvisations and speculation happening within that might not be obvious to the unfamiliar. Practices of bathing teaches us that they are situated, and they emerge because they are nested inside an interconnected assemblage of many other practices that are also culturally particular. This was spoken so well in Ali's talk. The narrow focus on the individuals and direct causality can ignore these invisible interconnections, and inadvertently, our design interventions might weaken social bonds that are crucial in a crisis. So how can we fold in with the agencies that are distributed across many people, materials, seasons, temporalities, and movements? Water, heat, and energy for bathing are not just basic elements. They imbibe healing, renewal, reciprocity, intimacy, and spirituality. How could we re-enchant these elements, deadened and flattened by the secular, pragmatic, modern mindsets, to instead give due recognition to kinships that are always flowing and connecting? Like my then-to-be husband, crossing over threshold requires patience and sensitivity. What more could we learn from things that are invisible and need to remain so, and to attune to moods, ailments, occasions, and weathers when recruiting people into unfamiliar relationships and practices? There's also a beautiful bird call in this video, but maybe it might not be that easy to hear. So the garments that need repairing piles up in the corner of my room until they beckon me, usually on a weekend when it's cold or raining. Here, I'm mending my boro jeans using a method called sashiko. Boro is the sound of something crumbling, boro, when materials, bodies, or minds are exhausted, falling apart. Sashiko is a running stitch needlework to quilt and reinforce worn areas, layering remnants of ordinary garments. Reworking textiles by piecing, patching, and darning was a domestic tradition by women. Chuzaburo Tanaka, a folklorist in far north Japan where winters are long and harsh, writes how he learned to withstand life's difficulties by witnessing his mother's and grandmother's repair garments that were literally stained with and soaked with lifeblood. For example, a padded jacket called bodo was used as a futon mattress when giving birth. He refuses to see these garments as a sign of extreme intergenerational poverty, but cherishes them by being carriers of blood and stories. Needles were also treasured for giving a lifetime of service, and when broken, they are honored in stone cans called harizuka. Like most of you, my time is managed by the clock and calendar. I find it difficult not to waste time, find time, save time, be productive with my time. In using these words shows how I am commodified. I am commodified by time. I am commodified in time, and in turn, how my work, body, and thoughts can become quantities that can be owned and measured. But when I do sashiko, my sense of time shifts in quality. I'm able to shackle the controls of modernity for a moment because the material beckons me to attend to other things. I pay attention to the tension, tangles, hear that wind, spacing of the thread, the patches over the rips and holes. Out of all this attention, another quality of temporality emerges from the rhythm of breathing and the movement of my hand. I often think about my mother who taught me how to sew, and my grandmother who made kimono, like this one that I'm wearing right now, which she made for my mother and then was passed down to me. Boro is now a movement made popular by sustainable fashion brands, exhibited in art galleries, plucked from its humble domestic beginnings. Objects and materials have always transitioned in meaning and use. Dominant design knows this as power, but does it ignorantly, carelessly, disrespectfully, by ignoring things that it doesn't understand or care about. So, what can Boro no Sashiko teach us about design readiness for uncertainty? For those of us conditioned by dominant design dictated by projects, practices like breathing, pausing, or untangling can help reconfigure temporality to sync with other movements. Could this form of meditation help to quiet the hurried, productive orientated minds? These materials keep us connected to people and places, stories and memories. We are here because of what they've given and passed on to us now. They predate our existence and exceeds our brief tenure, and we inherit these relationships as succession. Could our re-engagement allow us to revalue labor and service, to respect and care for the tools and materials and people that have given their services to us? In contrast with the God's eye view of a seamless system that design tends to crave for, Boro no Sashiko teaches us that another holistic resilience can be assembled by juxtaposing, accumulating, and patching small pieces together. Practices also are bundled in ways that might not appear like they go together. So, what can we learn from the welcoming of many so that other patches can join, nest, and grow from these seams? Short, numerous stitches in multiple directions reinforces strength, especially on the knees and bottoms that receive the hardest blows of living. Boro boro is a sound of exhaustion, things falling apart. Instead of hiding these, how can we honor and stay with the fallen to embrace the blows of living with uncertainties? Swansea has introduced individuals to respect and welcome many gods and ancestors of the land, such as Gogoku Hojo that hope for plentiful harvest. Ceremonies like these often took place in spring and autumn, following the cycles of the moon. In fact, we've just had our autumn festival. They have adapted over the centuries, but we can still see collective organizing continuing to this day. So this video shows hundreds that visit the Meiji Shrine during the New Year celebration in the heart of Tokyo. Village or neighborhood leaders, often men, take responsibility in budgeting and marshalling many hands and helpers. They also perform key ceremonial roles to teach younger generations. In fact, my elderly mother is a treasurer of our neighborhood group. She complains how role is tiring, like raising funds, the seasonal Matsuri events, welcoming new residents, but it keeps her busy. I'm grateful of this custom, so I worry less about her living on her own. Matsuri takes place inside, adjacent to, and linked to sacred sites, like shrines, temples, mountains, or near waterways. These cleared grounds also act as fire breakers or used for evacuation. Seasonal matsuri in these open spaces ensures repeat visits. I would intimately know the shortcuts to these grounds because of the many matsuri I participated in from my childhood, linking safe passages from home through neighborhoods, linking people, linking seasons. Matsuri has significance in post-disaster as well. The residents of Otsuchi, where many died in the tsunami, do not fear the sea, but the Matsuri renews their relationship to it. One resident, Ito-san, said, "The sea is the source of our livelihood and our inspiration. Matsuri helps us remember this." So what can Matsuri teach us about design readiness for uncertainty? Natural disasters have been constant, predating our existence. One could even say that living with disasters have designed this way of maintaining social organizing. But it's under other names and forms that service design might not recognize. How can such practices teach us ways to live with the vulnerabilities and mend the social, ecological, spiritual brokenness caused by our modern, disconnected lives? The Lagori collective might call Matsuri a rehearsal of futures. To me, rehearsal and readiness go together as everyday adjustments that carry futures forward. What's being rehearsed is a rhythm of decentralized coordination, one that softens the shock of infrastructural breakdown by remembering how to move together. The group, the habit, the language of updates, all of it is reused and re-inhabited. So in concluding, what can design readiness for uncertainty become? From these examples, design might spot that there is form, function, process, and outcomes because design is attracted to them as the main lever of change. But then these are taken apart into components to analyze, extract, tweak, or replicate. Replace the pieces that can be improved, scaled, duplicated. For example, an efficient smart water system that erases all other dimensions I shared about earlier. The danger is when these components are assumed that they can be cut out and transplanted without the thick in-betweens that hold them together. So let's caution one another when we take practices in such causal, literal ways. And when these systems that erase all the social practices become the template of large-scale infrastructures, this erosion and disconnect are then magnified in disasters and in the polycrisis. One can learn the form, but only to awaken curiosity for what's buried inside them. Another way to learn from these examples or any practices is to hold them like a mirror that reflects our own image back to us. So as not to assume that those who maintain such practices are more prosperous or prepared in uncertainty, but probably lead lives that are likely to be just as complex and contradictory as our own. So, in sharing glimpses of what I do, what others do, and many will continue to do, I hope you get a sense of how such practices are circuitous and entangled, gently simmering in the background through returning, folding in, stubbornly persisting through muscle memories inside bodies, families, communities, and places. They don't have a clear beginning or ending. Their low resolution might not fit a strategy or policy language, but I believe they can help us unlearn, relearn, and cultivate many possible routes to navigate. So when we design futures, especially in the urgency of the polycrisis, let's remember that relational qualities can only exist in the very specificities of people and place, and they will invariably change when they're taken outside of those conditions that nurtured those over seasons and generations. So when you feel that compulsion to grab, fix, and improve, let's first listen, attune, notice, follow, enter, pick up where people left off or handed over. Readiness in uncertainty can be just as rigorous in remaining open to seeing what's there, what might come, and waiting for many possibilities to bear fruit. In turning our attention to routines, it reminds us how hard it is to change something without the surrounding practices also changing. So instead of aiming to directly change individuals, let's look for path dependent grooves as potentialities, because practices tend to follow these that are etched over time. Significant work won't finish and changes can't be scheduled within financial or project timeframes. So let's awaken the ways we are already part of a chorus with planets and weathers. This can shunt us off the universal chronos time. Let's embrace the fragility of falling and honor them as endurances of serving and abandoning the pain point phobia of design that designs out the inconveniences, so as not to widen the privileges and disadvantages any further. Let's let the materials teach us when they refuse and resist to go at the ease, speed, and evenness that we want them to. What is that snag material or the tangled thread trying to teach us? Let our aching bodies guide us in ways to heal, to store, to pause, and stay with the becoming of many worlds. Let's trust them because they're just as wise in reminding what our frontal lobe has been tricked to believe in. Let's ground our work with practices of becoming with rather than planning, going and arriving as the only version of futures. Lastly, let's keep going, you and me, in practicing practices. As one way to keep that relationship going from collapsing, so together we can ready our disciplines and professions to remain strong in polycrisis and greet the many uncertainties to come. Thank you.
So, what a interesting and creative poetic narration of topics like disasters, climate change, vulnerability, communities. I'm really amazed how you have made this possible. Well, we'll open for like a question answer, like a session from the audience. We have like a couple of minutes just to begin with how you have made this possible to think, like a creative and interesting way, and it doesn't feel like a fear because these agents, they are actually agents of like a fear, like climate change, disasters, and all of that. You gave several examples here, from Japan. India is also like a prone to like certain things from left and right. Okay, how you have made this like possible to think in such a creative and interesting way? This is my first question to you.
Thank you, Shiva, for your question. The uh, the fear and uncertainties that come with disasters or catastrophes or the polycrisis is really real, and but when you spend some time with people who have lived through them, I can only take away hope. I can only take away how courageous and brave these communities are, and to think about what it is that we're actually designing, or what our fields, our disciplines, our profession is really doing to contribute to the intention to save lives, to improve them. I know they're genuine, but also I think we might then neglect to forget to see the resilience that are embedded in these communities because of the practices that they've maintained. And these practices are often like the things I've shown you about bathing. I mean, I've been asked, like, what has that got to do with designing? And that's the point. Why is it that we're not looking at these practices to see what's going on, to understand what's going on underneath them, not to copy them, and not to say that's going to be my inspiration for innovation, but to join in with that, to understand how that works, and to then carry that inside your body so you know how that works, not through, a blueprint or a journey map. I'm 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 so sorry because I'm being incredibly critical of those methods, partly because I think maybe they might not be that useful in a polycrisis. I think there are other things that we need to look at that have been maintained over centuries and centuries. They teach us so much. And I think that service design might also benefit a lot. In fact, might have the intelligence, partly through the systems thinking that is already there, to be able to learn so much from those things. And that was the intention for preparing this talk. So I'm really sorry if, again, I might be offending some of you or disappointing, the promise that a keynote should make. But I hope that some of the things that I was sharing might make sense to you also.
It's an interesting, like, immersive journey. Definitely, I think most of us could have like experience. Now, open the session is open for like questions. Please, yeah.
Hi. A very insightful presentation. Thanks for it. My question is more around since you're questioning the practices, right? So practices are reproduced and recreated. So it is. I can understand the dominant design, rejecting the dominant design perspective of looking at practices being transforming into processes. But do you kind of completely reject the role of tech being in how practices evolved with material and material when tech naturally comes to material part of the practices? So do you kind of advocating to the complete rejection of tech, or you think there is a need to kind of reinvent tech in a more meaningful way?
Hmm. Thank you for that question. I really appreciate. So my work, or maybe even me as a person, is never really about rejecting, but to show or expose what the thinking is underneath it. So what are the values that are embedded or hidden inside these methods that we think they're useful? Just like a sharp knife, when you teach a child how to use it, you have to show its potential of slicing the carrots as well as the danger. And this is what I'm trying to do with some of the methods that we sometimes take for granted in design and also in service design. The question around technology, the things that I've shown as practices that have been ongoing, those are technologies also. It's just that they don't appear or recognize as such. So when we unpack the notion of technologies into sorry, components of practices, what we see inside are the combination of materials, people, mindsets, values, seasons, weathers. The narrative around technology, of course, through modernism, has been presented to us as if it's the modern solution that we should all um, somehow solve all these major problems through technology alone. I'm not saying that's not. I don't think that's wrong. The only thing that I worry about is the fact that if we can't learn from how technologies have always been part of our stories, our families, our communities, and how they're so entangled, it's really difficult to then just take this little piece here and to say, I'm going to put it over there. This is the sort of mindset that tends to accompany modern thinking. And I think this is that DNA or the virus that I was talking about that gets embedded inside technology, just to say, a user, you can use this, over here. So the specificity and the embodiedness or what the surrounding practices are has to be looked at. And again, I think Alison did a much better job in explaining all this in the keynote yesterday, because I think the specificity of what Alison's and her team had done in terms of understanding the practices and understanding the emotional aspect, the all sorts of disadvantages that come with these things. I think their work, I mean, obviously your work, Ali, has been so amazing. So if we were to understand the entire complexity of those things, I think we've become much more humble in claiming what design or technology can do. This is what I also worry about. And I take full responsibility of this by being, you know, a teacher, researching, being here, pretending I know things. But this is something I really wish our community to take responsibility also. Thank you for your question.
So thank you, Yoko, for an amazing talk. And I think fits between the question that's been asked and yours, because something that I think what you've just said about very simple acts, practices, are technology often gets overlooked when we're designing. And also breaking the conventional ideas and concepts of what solutions should be. And I see that very much within the health sector, that we tend to model health on a, a Western logic of healthcare infrastructure, which we know now is actually very hard to sustain. So actually, it is about sort of, I will say, amplifying value that exists in places because communities are resilient. But I think there's a spectrum within service design where sometimes, you do get the extremes. And I see this particularly in healthcare where people go in with very fixed ideas of what solutions, what technology. And perhaps my most extreme examples I came across recently were people showing me healthcare devices that had been given by NGOs to hospitals in Malawi and Kenya. And it's eye-wateringly shocking in terms of how assumptions are made about infrastructure in healthcare, even down to simple things like guidelines, which are based on Western technology systems, which cannot be applicable to low resource settings. So I think there's a lot of invisible stuff that we can just ignore because of these dominant frames of, as I said, in particular health and how it should manifest itself in communities. But I do like the fact that you have mixed, Elizabeth Shove's work and then these very simple practices. But I think it's making people very aware that you really need to um, be sort of emotionally connected to what you're looking at in order to appreciate the inner resilience that communities have. But so less of a question and more as a sort of reflection.
Yeah, thank you. The interesting thing that for us as a community also is, and the disaster context that I work in tends to the solutions tend to be demanded of by government. So the governments are there to provide the emergency services, but we also know how hopeless governments are. But they often have the capital and resources to pay the designers to do these service designs. And I've seen so many that have been done over the, I mean, I've been working in the disaster space for about 15 years. Apps that give you warning. And It's just one example of technology. They break down because power fails. The mobile reception is often with the smoke. So this is the thing when you put these in people's hands and you say this is what will help you save lives. The trade-off of I guess when powerful agencies come in to give you this, the trade-off of that, this shiny object, compared to the neighborhood resilience, the community connections that you've had, this is what I often struggle with to say, actually, let's also look at that and see how they can kind of both work together rather than the over dependencies on the solutions being provided as well. So I mean, when I say these things, I think you all know what I mean because we have those lived experiences. I think it's just, again, let's bring those wisdoms you have that you've been often given by our families and communities, neighbors, just watching how people live their daily life. I think that can really enrich our practices in design, and that's what I'm hoping to do myself as well.
Yeah, this is where well, we have one last question from here. This is where the like a backdrop of this conference becomes even more relevant. Day's platform has come first time to Asia, and Asia is home to several like thousands of years of
Yeah,
continued
yeah.
cultural like things like India, China, Japan, and a couple of more.
Mm,
So do you think like how like this platform and this community is going to like give like some relevance and relationality, you know
mm,
and clues coming from this place to the global north?
yeah, yeah. I think our region has so much to teach the global north. I personally, and this is the work that Joyce and I have been doing for a number of years with the Designing Tangible Social Innovation Asia Pacific, and the team that are here, Sarah and Kem and others, or Ali also had been part of our project, is the again the global hierarchies of the West. Design follows this, so there is a sort of a worrying tendency that I hear in Japan, I hear even in Australia about, oh, we must always look to Europe. We must always sort of emulate the sort of designing that are coming from there. They are the most amazing people that we have to learn from. And I really, I just don't, I just question that. And of course, I can say these things because I was taught in the West. You know, I done my degrees and my PhDs in these Western institutions, and they still fall short in teaching me things that I think I have been taught in my own native local communities, plus also the immense work, the immense gratitude I have when I have been invited to work with First Nations communities in Australia. And the knowledge hierarchies tend to dismiss those. We know this. So how can we, as an ethical and caring community, continue to elevate the presence of immense wisdoms in the cultures embedded here, and as well as many other places that we can often overlook by the knowledge power hierarchies that exist in these disciplines.
Okay, so one final question from this side.
Yes, Yoko, thank you very much for a beautiful, uh, yeah, just reflection. Um, and I don't think you have to apologize for anything with this. Um, I think, well, one short question. I hope, is your keynote going to be made available in the proceedings at all?
I guess so, yes, I think.
The Because again, your words were so thoughtfully constructed. I would love to spend time to read, what you had said. Anyway, that my question is, and kind of picking up on Dr. Allison's yesterday kind of idea of a slow epidemic. In design education, do we have a slow moving disaster happening? And you already just started speaking to it just a moment ago, but I guess
Mm,
because design education is very much a process based, it's very rational based, knowledge is commodified, and organized this way. And I'm wondering about getting towards more practices that are reciprocal, that are communal, that are, you know,
mm,
integrative.
mm.
I'm wondering from your experience as a design educator, if you could change, like radically change design education, what are some initial kind of starting points or priorities that might come to mind with this?
Oh my goodness. Peter, thanks for your question. And of course, such a compelling question would come from you. Um, I mean, to ask that question is the point, perhaps, and to have that discussion with your faculties. In fact, this is something that I'm quite passionate about in the work I do at RMIT in uh, leading clusters of conversations around, well, actually for RMIT, which is a Western institution that teaches, practices, researches on unceded Indigenous lands, what does it mean for us to be elevating that conscious about the wisdoms and practices and designing that have been on that land for, as I said, for 75,000 years? We're trying to sort of make the inroads around these conversations, and perhaps within a small cohort of a group, this is a very lively conversation, but it's a very small minority. The more established one gets in a discipline, say architecture, the harder it becomes. So it's not sort of by accident that maybe comm design or communication design or even adjacent young design disciplines are much more open to thinking about the possibilities of things that are not being defined by the Bauhaus or the industrialized models of the design processes and problem solving. And as you said, uh, I think again it's about these sort of categories or predetermined things that we see as valuable and things that we don't. Continuing to question that, continuing to question the assumptions that I am always trying to make. And this is the thing about what I'm grateful to my aunties who we catch up, on New Year's bathtubs, and they just don't give a shit about what I do. And it really keeps me humble. It keeps me really connected to, I guess, the stories or the I mean, they don't call it teachings, but there are important lessons that are being taught. And I think we can be champions of those stories. The students bring those things always into the classroom. So what could it look like for us as educators to facilitate a conversation where we can recognize that as well? So those are some initial thoughts, but thank you again.
So, thank you for the interesting answers as well. So, to sum up, I definitely see a beautiful poetic like a narration of time, place, and just being there in that moment and live it, experience an emotive experience, like a through relational design, seeing things in the context, futures thinking, and cooperative, co-creative pathways with communities. We heard resonant themes about design as listening, attending to more than human entanglements, embracing uncertainty as fertile ground, seeing possibility even in those circumstances, respecting sovereignty and relational knowledges. On behalf of Serv 25 at the Department of Design, IIT Hyderabad, I extend our deepest gratitude for your insights and generous, generosity today. To all the audience, thank you for your engagement and presence and lots of questions. I think there are many more questions awaiting you. I myself have. Let us carry these conversations to our sessions, collaborations, and practices. With that, we conclude this immersive like a keynote. Please join me in giving another round of applause to Dr. Akama. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enriching keynote and the valuable dialogue that followed. I now request the chair, Professor Shivaji, to kindly felicitate our keynote speaker.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. This brings us to the end of today's keynote sessions. A big thanks to Professor Shivaji for chairing the session. I would like to call Professor Delvin to felicitate Professor Shivaji for being the chair of the session. Thank you. Thanks a lot. With that, we bring the keynote. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We hope you had a fulfilling lunch. Now we can move on to the next session, that is a panel discussion. So the theme for today's discussion is the future of service design education.
It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this panel, Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Das. Mr. Das pursues research in behavioral and design sciences at Design Research Lab at TCS Research. His work bridges human behavior, design, and technology with a professional focus on service design for organizational transformation, large scale design research, innovation proliferation, and circular economy design. He holds a Master of Design from National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad and a Bachelor of Technology from IIT Gandhinagar. I request Mr. Bhaskar Jyoti Das to come on stage and take charge of this session.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to our panel session on the future of service design education. Yes, it's perfectly timed for that post lunch energy dip, but hopefully, we'll keep your energy up and the discussion will be fascinating. As service design takes the center stage across industries, subject domains, and geographies, we are here to tackle three burning questions. Where are we now? What's keeping us up at night? And how do we build programs that will actually prepare design students and design pedagogy for tomorrow's challenges? Let's dive in and make this the most engaging hour of this afternoon. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. Our first panelist is Professor Deepak. He's from IIT Hyderabad, where he is pioneering research at the intersection of engineering and human centered design. Deepak is a design educator and photographer with interests spanning digital heritage preservation, AR, VR, photography, design innovation, autonomous drones, and AI in art. He was instrumental in establishing IIT Hyderabad's design department and developing their design pedagogy. I had a similar chance to host Professor Deepak for a panel discussion almost 15 years ago at my alma mater at IIT Gandhinagar. Next, we have Professor Daniela from Polyme. She is a leading voice in transformative service design for complex social systems. Daniela spearheads groundbreaking research in mental health service design through her recovery project, which has revolutionized community based design interventions in Italy. She has also authored several books in service design, and since 2022, she has been the coordinator of master's degree course in product service system design at Polyme. Our next panelist is Professor Allison. She joins us from UAL London. She leads innovative research addressing global health challenges through service design. She is also the principal investigator of the DOSA project, a UK India collaboration tackling antimicrobial resistance through community based diagnostic services. We have already had a little glimpse about her work during yesterday's keynote. Professor Allison's work exemplifies how service designers must navigate cultural contexts, policy frameworks, and grassroots implementations. Finally, we welcome Professor Satu from the University of Lapland, Finland. She leads the Proto XR project, exploring how extended reality technologies can enhance design learning and innovation capabilities. Her research spans virtual production technologies and AI integration in service systems, positioning her perfectly to discuss how we prepare students for the future of human centered design in a technology driven world. I welcome you all. First of all, on behalf of the Serv Des'25 organizing team, I once again welcome you and thank you for taking the time to join us for some wonderful discussions. Today's discussion will focus on how we envision evolving service design education to address industry needs, embrace technological progress, and tackle societal changes. Let's start with a landscape view. Each one of you bring unique educational perspectives from design and engineering contexts, mental health service systems, rural healthcare, to technology enhanced design pedagogy. How would you each characterize the current state of service design in your respective countries and contexts? What are we doing good and what are we not doing so well? Can we begin with Daniela?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I think on service design education in Milan, this year we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the Master in Product Service System Design. So it has been quite a long way in terms of working and developing this area of education. So somehow gradually you can see that university and also alumni contribute to creating an awareness around service design or product service system design. So somehow then this is adjusting also with the research projects. So I can say in some areas this is established, recognized, and also in the rest of Italy there are different places where different takes, different interpretations of service design are emerging, and of course every location has different kind of markets, situations, For example, in Rome is more connected to public administration and so on. So I think it's on one side is still developing and still will be continuously developing to adjust to the situation, but it's kind of starting to be kind of established.
Satu, would you like to highlight how's service design doing in Finland?
Now I think I got it. Thanks. It's a big question. I think Finland itself, it's a quite small country, but we have a quite strong service design field. Aalto University and us up in North, we both provide master's level education. And then we have schools of applied sciences that also do the same. So I would say that we have exceptionally strong educational base in service design. If I think about what is the accessibility to service design teaching, and it's very, our university is art and science university. So we have a lot of students from also coming from other schools who do the minor in service design. So I would say that it's quite well somehow cross-cutting throughout the educational field. We have 11 universities, almost all universities provide students with this minor service design studies, and that's based on our curricula in Lapland. I think if I think about the job situation, almost 80% of the design jobs are in the digital fields, and service design has been responding well to that need. So I would say that in that respect, we are quite well off. But then, it's a whole another discussion when you start thinking more, like where is our curricula going? And then different levels of education, masters and PhDs, and kind of what is the job placement? Because, like we always will have junior designers who start with something. And I suppose, like, what is the skill set that you need when you work in more operational setting and then going into more strategic working with CEO level? So I think it's probably not only service design, but any design would have this kind of thinking to do. I think, like, if this is some kind of overview of the field, I would say that there's a lot of options for service design studies. There's service designers working in operational and strategic positions. Public sector is using a lot of service design. I think we have come some way already from that point when a lot of design agencies and advertising agencies, they suddenly overnight became service designers. That, I think, that was then maybe in the 2000s or so. So I think the ones who are offering service design have some background also in service design that uplifts the quality. But then, it's another discussion when you start thinking about the skill sets and capacities and understanding more what you are doing. But maybe this is like an overall description.
Yes, yes. You mentioned a very good point. We'll come to the point of skills of teachers and students both, but I'd love to highlight the point that you made that you come from a basic science school, right? It's sciences school. It's a
We have
engineering departments as well.
we are university consortium.
Okay.
So we have University and University of Applied Sciences. In applied sciences side, we have all the like sciences and nursing. Then we have also natural sciences at the Arctic Research Center. And at the university, we have 4 different faculties. We have art and design, um, teacher education, law, and social sciences. So it's a quite how do you say? It's not common.
There's a lot of
It's a not
variety.
common
Yeah,
combination. And what is characterizing our university is that we have very strong mission to to meet the needs of the region, because we are up on the Arctic Circle, and we do a lot of outreach with communities. We have a region which is extremely sparsely populated. We have more reindeer than humans in this this environment. Still, we have very strong policies that say that we have to provide the same level of services to people, to the citizen. So we are trying to also participate in that, make that promise true. It is not true,
sure, sure.
but you know, like service design has a role to do, and that little bit differentiates us from other universities, because we have that kind of
Collaboration.
mission. Yeah.
On that point, I'm aware of Polytechnico as well. It's a Polytechnico. You have multiple engineering departments as well. But Deepak, IITs are also placed. It's said to be the the top set of colleges in India, engineering. And how is design doing here? Do you have collaborations?
Yeah, design and service design, if you look at it, and I will talk not only from IITs, talk on Indian scenario. Uh, there are very less. In fact, if you look at IIT Hyderabad is offering, but that is one part of the larger curriculum, small section of it. Otherwise, in private, there's Karnavati University has few minor programs, and there are 2 more. That's it. For a country of 1.5 billion people, and now we can boast of 3,500 design schools, and just 4 courses. I think it's too less. And we are actually starting. Actually, we most probably will be offering, and we are starting. So we will be the pioneers. But said that again, service design as a discipline for job, like you guys are doing it, not TCS is doing it. But otherwise, if you look at UI UX, that is the hottest job market for design students now. Because that is well placed. So that is in the corporate sector, if you look at it. But when I'm look at grassroots level, very unorganized, without using the word service design, there is actually, like for example, if I cite the example of Kerala has this ASHA workers, for example, actually. So they go door to door in the villages and look at people's activity, and if some elderly are there, they provide services, everything they do it actually. And then there are people who come home, and even the people who it's very well organized services are there, even for garbage collection. It is not a government thing actually, people are doing it actually. So without mentioning the word or education of service design, it is happening. Our design students are actually into service design, but we are not mentioning the name.
They don't know that
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
doing
yeah.
service
Oh, what
design.
they are doing, they don't know, but they're doing is this what we are talking. But formally, of course, we will be one of the pioneers. Will be doing it, and hopefully, like many examples which IIT Hyderabad has shown, now it has become viral. Everybody is copying now, so it's very nice things in a design education. People copying good practices are very good. Yeah.
On you mentioned about ASHA workers. I mean that takes me to Alison. And I have a soft corner for because after listening to your keynote, because my wife happens to be from Silchar, from the same university. She graduated from the same university, so I felt really touched. I don't know. I haven't informed her, but yeah. But I have a. You have quite a diverse experience. You were working in London, and then you have also worked with rural Asia. Uh, there is significant growth if you see, in Asia and in Europe, but that's not the case in the rest of the world. Do you think that's affecting service design pedagogy or, as such, the discipline of service design?
So I think what you said is really key. I think so. just to put some context, in 2008, I set up the service design course at LCC UAL. Just to put it in context, I used to say, I've set up the service design, and people would say, what, you've set up surface design? And I'd go, no, service design, and then they'd say, what that? And it was really rather exasperating. But the point I'm trying to make is actually also that some of my colleagues had been working in service design research. So Daniela knows Adam Thorpe. He's been working for a long time in local government. Another colleague, Lorraine Gammon, has been working with the Justice at the Ministry of Justice for, again, over 20 years. So there was a sort of research culture there, but it wasn't service design as such. And then we started the course. This has grown exponentially. I mean, I think even within, it feels a relatively short time, but from 2008, it has become so embedded in organizations. We have many international students, which is a real pleasure. It's a real honor. But actually, a lot of our projects are community based. So, and it's always learning by doing. And it's great to see that here, that there are so many live projects, because I think students need to learn in that very real way about the challenges of, again, being respectful, being that they're not top down, but actually listening to communities and responding to their needs. In answer to your question, does the rest of the world need service design? I think it does have a role. I was at an event recently on health in low resource settings, and there were people from Malawi, Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, and actually there's a different type of service design that needs to play out in these contexts. I don't think it's the answer to drop down the, as Yoko was saying this morning, the sort of Eurocentric global north. I think it's got to be led much more through a sort of interdisciplinary dialogue around sort of anthropology, place, other technologies which are local, are again reflective of the people and how they work, because it's too easy to think that you're going to be able to present quick solutions, and the digital can also wipe out a lot of value in communities if it's not, again, responsive. So yes, I think there's lots of opportunities, and I would love, I mean, just as an example from this event on low resource settings, there's a project that I hope will come off the ground. There's absolutely zero money in it, but it was to do with midwives in the Congo. And it's such a fundamental problem that actually I just thought, if we can do anything, and we're having the conversations, to just get something off the ground in terms of a communication. It's a small thing, but those are the moments where you think, actually, we just, there's enough data out there to tell you that there are premature babies and that neonates. We know the figures. Actually, we need some more action on it. And I do think design education does allow that. So we're working with some doctors there just to see if we can get some ideas around changing some, communication channels. It's early days. So where I'm going with this is, yes, there's lots of opportunities, but you need to be working with people on the ground. That's the other thing. You need to be very close to the problem. You don't have to be in the problem, but you have to be close to the people who are close to the problem. So
One thing we have observed, I believe last time I could visit Servdes in Rio, and we had some discussions about that service design cannot work by itself. It has to collaborate with someone else, right? So in terms of, I would like to have that answered by Deepak. What do you see? Are there any institutional barriers in colleges like IITs and all, where it prohibits more collaboration between interdisciplines? I mean, for example, computer science working with service design, or let's say, chemical engineering working with graphic design, for example.
I think in principle it is not there, because we encourage collaborative projects, and in fact we have this some projects which called free electives. Every student is encouraged to do collaborate with other department and work on it actually. So that way technically there is no barrier. But the issue is actually because it's not that popular in terms of understanding. Like again, the meaning of the word, like if you say service design, what is it itself is people don't know, and people from core branches, they think that whatever they are doing in their curriculum is good enough. So that's what, so we are actually promoting multidisciplinary projects, In fact, right now we have started for the first year students something what we call Bharati or something like that. For all first year students, like for example, each faculty is mentoring around 10 students from 10 different disciplines. We together build a project. We are together doing something actually. So I have, one computer science student, one mechanical, one electrical, one design student. Everybody we are sitting together and we are doing. And personally, for me, we are doing something for the community. Actually, we are looking at service approach. We are looking at it actually. So that way, there is no barrier. I don't think there is any barrier. But in Indian education system, we are traditionally trained to be very unidirectional, because that engineering we are in the entrance exam culture, right? So people are not choosing what they want to do. They are choosing what their rank allows you to do it actually. So that is where this issue is actually. So uh,
How is
but
the
that is
situation
changing, in
in
fact.
Finland? Sorry,
No, in the NEP it is changing actually. Students
uh-huh.
are allowed to move out and they can take credits from anywhere.
Mhm,
So if it is implemented like it is very similar to Finnish
mhm.
education system. I can say a new thing, but if it's properly implemented, it is going to be very good. Yeah.
Yes. So, in Finland, do you have students, mostly service design students, do they work on projects which are very much within the discipline of service design, or is it mandatory for them to collaborate with others?
Uh, at, it would be wonderful that they would collaborate in teams with other schools, but mm, mostly they work. Like they work all the time with industry and communities. We have structured. We have service design only in masters. We have um, multidisciplinary service design master, where actually we have solved it in a way that you can come to that master's course with various backgrounds. So we offer that to engineering students. We don't teach. We only have like some individual courses on BA level, but we only offer service design in the masters. And for our master is multidisciplinary, which means that you can come with various backgrounds. And if you are coming, let's say, from engineering or business, nursing, social work, those are areas where we have a lot of students coming in to do their masters. Then we have a compulsory minor where they have to do kind of service design minor to get into visual, strengthening their visual skills and more traditional um design with skills, how do you say, visual skills, prototyping skills, things like that. What you usually use in design, that has worked really well, because in this way we are educating service designers who have in-depth knowledge about the area that they will be working on, like for example combination of social work and service design, nursing and service design. So that is really good. It's same also for our doctoral studies. We there also enable this multidisciplinary background. So this is our way of working. It might be also that it somehow responds to these challenges when you are not located in the center. Usually when you have to provide something, people even in the regions, they have to be very multidisciplinary. It's very rare that a one person could just focus on something very narrow, but you have to kind of be very resourceful. So I suppose that's the spirit we have also in service design masters. We have two masters program, multidisciplinary service design master in Finnish language, which is this multidisciplinary, and then we have service design strategies and innovations, which is maybe more traditional, where you come with the design background. And that's together with Latvia and Estonia, and that has Erasmus Mundus it is awarded with Erasmus Mundus. So the students will get scholarship for 2 years of studying, and that has been excellent collaboration. I have to say that maybe personally my somehow interest lies there in multidisciplinary. It might be also because of my own background that I'm also master in social sciences and in arts. So I suppose that that makes it for me somehow very natural.
You also mentioned about that, you're quite in the north. And then I believe, I mean, culturally, it's very different from, let's say, a tropical country like India. It's very, we have different contexts altogether.
Yes, definitely different contexts. And when I think about my recent research, I probably been more focusing on this kind of setting what we have with sparsely populated areas. Of course, we work a lot with our indigenous communities, and but somehow that I would not even somehow bring it so much to master's level at all, but more to PhD student levels, because I think I think what Yoko was explaining in her keynote applies there very much. That uh, I I I would think that service design would not work at all. I would not see that working much, or if it would work, you would have to really take a lot of time and be invited, I think.
I'll just pass on that question to Daniela as well. You have been working on multiple things, different countries, and Polyme, in one way, you are the torch bearers of service design. As far as we see how it is, you've been in a way also creating new pedagogies, new ways of doing things. So do you think there can be a global service design education, but which is cultural, which is contextually very much put into a particular context, but at the same time it's global? Because right now what we have is there are different processes. Service design still lack a completely formal framework of doing things. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, global in terms of the interest that it raises across different countries. So there is somehow the word goes, and there is interest in this the approach, the mental model that brings this disciplinary field. But then, if you look at how different countries have been developing their own ways, I mean, not all the service design courses are called service design. There are more focuses in South America. There is a lot around social innovation. In Asia, we found a lot of focus also on more on technology perspective. In the northern countries, participatory design and so on. So there are different interpretations, different names. And different interpretations. So I think I would value these plural voices and different ways of bringing the disciplines, and then we can learn from each other.
Sure, sure. The same question to Alison. I mean, you have seen how service designers work, or probably how designers think in London, and how that is in India, perhaps. So, is can we create a global framework? Do you think like?
I agree with Daniela. I don't think there's a one size that fits all, but I think the fact that service design isn't one thing. I think it's very open to interpretation, and it should be reflective of its context. I mean, the thing is, when I'm working in London, I'm actually working with the Somali and the Bangladeshi community in the East End of London. And when I'm working globally, I'm working with, again, Assam and people in West Bengal. There are some, again, drawing on anthropology, there are some universal principles about being human in all of this. And the fact that, I love the fact that you said that there are there are people, human beings, we serve, we help our neighbors, we have our friends, there's a whole ecosystem of service there that isn't formalized through, personas and everything like that. So I think it's recognizing these different notions of what it is to be in a service system, but it doesn't always need to follow this universal language. I think we should be open to interpretation, and that's what makes it very beautiful, actually. Um, and I think it's really important that we also, as Yoko was saying, what are those practices that we can take for granted? Because sometimes if you go in with the mindset about this is service design, actually you're not going to really pick up on the cultural sensitivity around a place and the more invisible sharing, or whether it's sharing or reciprocity, whatever it is, you can miss that because you're almost fixated on these perhaps sometimes overly structured ways of seeing. So I think um, absolutely with Daniela, I think it's about embracing a sort of pluriversal approach to this. And I'm always surprised when I read papers from South America, how different they are in tone, and that needs to come through because we don't want everything to be bland. Just picking up, sorry to go back, about this bringing service design into engineering. So University of the Arts is a art and design institute. We do not have engineering, and so our course grew out of a collaboration between LCC and Cranfield University, which is a science engineering postgraduate course. And there was real difficulties with people saying, why is Cranfield going to be working with you, a college of communication? And I said, we will bring the service design dimension, the human centeredness to the technology. And it required setting up workshops. So there was a whole process of education between the two institutions through this collaborative course that we set up right at the beginnings in 2008. And then it became the service design course that it was today. But it was through working with nanotechnology. But it was remarkable how many people were saying, well, how are you going to converge these spaces? But all my work now, I think since 2008, has always been in education with nanotechnology, or it's been with chemists. And actually, there is an opportunity there in terms of the ways of working within service design that allows this co-creation of knowledge around these different disciplines, not just with external communities. I just wanted to add that because of what you were saying.
You rightly pointed technology, the effect of technology, and how it's connecting different countries and different domains and all. I would love to ask to Deepak. You have moved from I know you from NID. You're the HOD of photography department. Then you come here, and I get to hear about your work with technology in my company as well. So, how do you think? My question to you is: we are dealing with the challenge of teaching both traditional design methods as well as new technology, new skills are daily getting innovated. We are supposed to keep up with it. About AI integration as well. Do you think the programs are adapting?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. I think we as designers, we were always reluctant to change. I suppose though change is inevitable. So, but we are adapting because technology. If you look at it, no, like so, more than teachers, the students adopt the technology much faster. Okay, so technology, like when you come to technology integration into the curriculum, say for example, like I work with AR, VR, XR nowadays. Okay, so that was not my traditional education, so I adopted it actually, and now we are using everything. So if you look at, we have a system called Cave, so we are integrating that in our education system. So it is very much there actually. Now, when you're talking about AI integration, so the interesting thing is service design. When you talk about service as human-centered design aspect, when you look at it, and technology is actually removing people from that. No, like now if you look AI, like that's the biggest fear now. Everybody's saying that will it take away my job? Like that. So now the biggest task is actually to understand AI as a tool or AI as an enabler rather than a demon who takes away your jobs from you. Okay, so that way when you look at it in service design, when you look at it, what are the tools and technologies which you like, say for example AR VR are heavily used in training, like KVs we are using for training, so it eases the job a lot of it actually, and without removing people. Okay, so whereas when it comes to becoming like I was telling Asha workers and all. No, earlier they did not have the data. Like when we were in NID long before, we were working on a project where people, especially in northeastern states, people who were pregnant women, they had no access to hospitals. So we actually designed a product just because those time cell phones were not popular. So press one button, it gives an alert to the hospital. So I think there are only five buttons in the whole phone, the device. So so that device became an enabler. See, now the phone become like Asha workers when I'm talking about that, they're using technology a lot actually. Like scanning QR code, like technology like digital payment. And if you look at it actually, now I was very because there was a big doubt about how the illiterate people will deal with it. Now if you look at it, they are using more phone pay than us actually. You go to the vegetable vendor on the roadside, they all have QR code scanners. And then the beautiful thing is they also somebody has designed a product that is when, because the biggest trouble about paying money is that did you pay cash? There is a currency I know that I gave you. Here I have no confirmation. They made a device. Thank you, boss. I have received 1,000 rupees. Whatever. It's coming. So you see how product design also becoming, adapting or becoming a supportive thing to the service actually. And I think the technology, see, development of technology is inevitable. Okay, so and people adopt, and it is not going to take away the jobs. That's what my thing, but it will become an enabler actually. So that
Nice that you brought the question of how technology, how there is a uh, collaboration of different design disciplines by itself, and
yes,
you're not sticking to one kind of design, but you're playing to create a particular solution or a particular product. Now, I would love to bring to my domain. I don't come from academia, but industry. So, what role do you think industries should play in this?
yeah,
Because we are looking for people, we are up to solving problems, right? We don't really actually see whether the student or the employee has been coming from a service design background or a product design background, but we are looking to solve problems as such. So can we begin with what do you see, that what role should industry partnerships play?
yes, I think industry and academia, and what I'm talking about, one of the issues which I see is the lack of industry collaboration. Okay, so but places like IITs, I have no problem because we are the top institute, so industry will come to us and also. But otherwise, on the education, if you look at the way industry collaboration is happening, it's very less. So more and more industries should come in for collaboration. So maybe we should have at a project level, it should be industry projects. So more support from that is inevitable. It's needed actually.
Sure.
So it is coming in another sense when go for job only. But if we can we bring industry problems to the classroom so that students and their the contribution of the industry become visible to the community. So that's what I'm looking at actually.
Sure. Daniela, I mean, how do things happen in Italy? I mean, do you have more collaborations with industry, or do the problems that students work on usually come from industry, or do you create? I mean, do you have mostly internal problems?
Well, in PSSD, there is a strong tradition in working more on around social innovation, public sector. So we work a lot with communities, institutions, the sector. But increasingly, we are also opening up with having projects with organizations, collaborating with design agencies, to try to create and close a bit more the link with the market also for students. Of course, we have internships, and we facilitate also. We have an advisory board that we invite in conversations also with our students. We create opportunity for mentorship or tours within companies. So we try always to have this dialogue open. And for us, it's also fundamental to understand where things are going. Also, this year we did this 20th anniversary, and we managed to reconnect. That was the aim of this anniversary with alumni, which are globally spread around the world. Um, Also because they are testimony their journey, in their professional journeys, and how wherever they go, they create their own ways of interpreting service design, and they can help us also to reflect on where we need to go. And of course, now AI is bringing a challenging because there is somehow there has been a shift in companies that try to privilege more technology focused skills and profiles. And also, there is a risk of reducing the need for uh, neo graduate students that generally cover very operational tasks. And now, somehow, agencies and particular large organizations are adopting AI to do so. So we saw they are closing some design teams within an organization. It's like there is a tech obsession that might be challenging. So we need to reflect on what
Sure.
and how we want to approach.
Okay, so we are losing time. We have very little time, but I do want to. Ravi asked me that I can push it by 10 minutes, so I'll try to stick to that. Uh, so I have a few more questions, and that would be probably I'll ask at the end. But I don't want people to beat me up after the session saying that you didn't give us a chance. So we can take two questions probably, some direct questions, not very long questions, but short questions that you'd love to ask. Anyone?
Hello. I was hearing about this collaboration between the industry and also the academia. However, there are two different entities. They have different core values, and I will just read what I have written down. So, academia exists to explore, question, and generate new ideas. Industry focuses on applying knowledge to create measurable impact. So, education risk being short term and utilitarian, which means that it is more related to how fast in industry, and in academia, it's about why. So there are two different, there is a need for collaboration, but there is also a need for them to exist parallelly. So, what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Whom are you asking that question?
Uh, to Dr. Deepak and also to everyone. But, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we all can take 1 minute or
Yeah,
probably
thank you.
30
It's
seconds to
a
answer
very
that.
nice question. This was the argument that I had long before. When always there was this question: industry has to come, industry has to come. This is the a long question actually, where industry, like academia, should lead the knowledge generation, or academia should follow what industry wants. Are we producing products for industry, or are we into knowledge creation? This is the question. But this interesting thing about when you carry, that is why industry led project, because they bring real world challenges to the classroom without losing the freedom. Like say for example, when like in my older institute in an ID last project, there was a rule long before: student has to, like, you finish 4 years, then you go out in the industry and prove yourself that you learned something new, and it has to be original. There is the same funda we do in IITs, where when we are doing PhD, the generation of new knowledge. Okay, so that is not compromised at any in academia. At the same time, you cannot be in a ivory tower and making only theoretical thing, because we have adopted 5 villages. So we work with the kids there, we work with the school children there, then we see the real world problem. So that is why the link is very much needed actually. So the collaboration is very much needed in one way. At the same time, it should not be dictating. Industry should not be like a industry giving a task and you are doing the task. So many times, like nowadays, I'm seeing corporate come and say, "Oh, we want this." They're looking for ready-made solutions. So we say that we don't have it actually. So we are not training institutions. So that if you understand that difference, I think they can coexist, very nicely actually. But industry can actually pose the problems. With this is something which we want to resolve. Then academia can actually look at it as an independent thing. That's what I think.
Also, I would like thoughts of Miss Satu. I hope I pronounce it right.
Thank you. Nice, you read my mind because I really wanted to comment on that. And I think, of course, like university is not one. There's so many kinds of universities and academic communities and research communities. And I somehow think that I think we are also following the principle that we have real life projects. But like I somehow believe very strongly also the kind of old idea of creating knowledge, and for create knowledge and be innovative, you sometimes need also freedom, and you need to experiment and you need to try things out and take a lot of risk. And if I think about, for example, as an example, we work with the Lapland Central Hospital, and in hospital environment, you cannot do experiments and testing because someone can die. You have to kind of follow the quite precise protocols. Of course, a little bit depending where you work there. But let's say we have had projects with emergency room, and you cannot wildly test things. But for that, we created a simulation environment, and we actually bring doctors and nurses there where they can really freely experiment and they don't have to take care in that. But I think that the the small autonomy that universities have left, we should maintain, to have this kind of space where we can experiment and be creative. Not saying that you cannot do that in industry project, but maybe sometimes you have areas what industry is not interested at the moment, and then you can, for example, roam there quite free and find something really interesting that you can bring in. In my research group, we have PhDs and researchers. Some of them are focusing on this kind of public services like healthcare and stuff. Then we are working with Volkswagen, and I'm all the time having this ambiguity that I'm here in the middle. Should we choose one area? But then, no, I think there's so much dialogue between people working in different projects that it makes sense still to have quite broad working space. But I definitely s- speak for this some autonomy where you can operate freely and experiment and be creative and bring things there that does not even seem that they would belong.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We have less time. We have just 5 minutes. I wanted 1 minute or probably 2 minutes each. Your final thoughts. There's a legacy question that we have been asking. There's a traditional question. Let's imagine the scenario 10 years from now. What would distinguish a service designer educated in 2035 versus one educated today? Maybe if we can begin with Elisa.
I think in 10 years, you will see service designers playing um, roles in, I mean, we have, they've been accepted in government, but in potentially more strategic roles. I think also you will see them more within these interdisciplinary teams. I think playing a role which is without beyond just the design realm and the idea of sort of service projects. I hope that it would be also within other emerging science areas. But I do think, again, there are limits to what service design can do, and it is collaborative, and its collaboration needs to be pushing the boundaries. And also, I think I would hope service design plays a more vocal role in terms of pushing back on the overly neoliberal approaches that are going. So I think within education, it's important for service designers to go out realizing that they do have the, whether they're listened to is another thing, but they have a capability to challenge against systems that are perpetuating inequalities and things like that. So I hope in 10 years' time, there's more activity in that area.
I think, thank you, Alison. That was such an excellent response. I would want also to divide to be less what it is now. But I think I respond now something totally different because I experiment a lot with technologies. So I would see in 10 years service designers tool bag expanding immensely. And I hope that there is not only multidisciplinary teams, but there would be more global teams, which would be possible. That you have stronger collaborations globally, and in the teams you kind of learn to work with in a service design team where one is coming from India, one can be from Lapland, but like I would love to see something like that happening. That I think we would find better solutions and larger impact in that way, that we learn to create these kind of themes.
Daniela?
Okay, 10 years is a long projection. But I think that I like the idea that Alison was suggesting about this multidisciplinarity. Service design inevitably is integrating knowledge. We bring in social science and management and informatics and so on. So I think that's a space where I could see, and I would like to see service design maybe specializing even more. What does it mean to do service design to transform healthcare systems or into policy or into mobility and so on? So kind of to becoming even more impactful and integrating the necessary knowledge around that. Um, and we are working more toward a more systemic and transformational transition perspective. I imagine that is also another big areas that service design is emerging with its own contribution within other disciplinary fields that are dealing with change at a large scale, which is another area. And of course, we all deal with this transformation of the digital that is definitely challenging what are service themselves with this idea of this agents society economy, and what that means in terms of designing for future services and what are all the implications. So as academics, if we need to bring back to the initial question, how can we remain critical? Because at the same time, there is such a push to, I feel, of course, as the coordinator of a master program, to remain relevant, that we need to engage with this deep transformation. And there is a push to accelerate. And when you talk with agencies, all they talk about is the acceleration and experimentation and transformation they are doing, and how they don't even know what is next week, because every week there is something new and the pace is accelerating. So university is a space where maybe there is more time to take the time to reflect and try to bring an interpretation, a take on this transformation. We don't really know what and where and how, but I think as a service design maybe community, this could be a challenge that we should take.
Deepak?
Yeah, thanks. I think they've said everything. I was also thinking, like this d- disciplines, that's compartments of the disciplines will collapse, and I think the borders will merge, and then it will become unified. And service design, because in industrial revolution, if you look at it, really, it was an age of technology. Like now, I think technology has reached a saturation. Then now, human centric approach. Like we are actually looking at human centered design. Like so that way, every aspect of design become a service design actually, because there is nothing which because we are actually talking about the well-being of not only humans, and their environment. If you look that way, so this is what I am looking at now. 10 years, is not too far actually. So I think we will meet again in another conference. They'll think, oh, this was just yesterday. So technology wise, if you look at the way in which the speed which the technology is developing now, so we already adopted the technology. So I don't think that is going to be a barrier, but that will become an enabler. Technology is an enabler, and it will become a helpful thing. That's what I am actually foreseeing actually. So one day I will see this, like if not in 10 years, all this discipline merge, and like we were visualizing, any student studies what they want and they want to do it rather than what their discipline offers. So that I think will build a better environment in academy. That's what I am looking
Sure,
at.
sure. Thank you, everyone. There was, I mean, we from discussing the current landscape, addressing critical gaps in curriculum, industry alignment, pedagogy, importance of interdisciplinary collaboration. We have almost covered a lot of topics, I feel. Your willingness to engage is really, I'm thankful on behalf of Serv Des'25. Thank you once again for your time and contributing to this vital dialogue. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all our panelists and moderator for such an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. And thank you to the audience also. Uh, Now I request the moderator and the panel members to come to the center of the stage for a felicitation. Moderator Mr. Bhaskar will felicitate the panel members. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I now request Professor Haseen to please come forward and felicitate our moderator, Mr. Das, for chairing this session.
So that concludes our panel discussion. Once again, a big thank you to all the speakers and moderator. Now the